Uncontrolled Chaos here. I got the chance to interview the lead art developer on the Rebirth server. They go by the name Silver Aged Fan. Now, in this interview, I'm going to read you the responses they gave to the questions I asked. And the reason this is done is they are well known in the industry for the job that they do for their main income. And in this, a lot of companies don't view game developers and modders as an actual job and doing things really well, which is really bad because game developers have to do a lot more work than a lot of other programmers and artists do. For instance, in 3D modeling, when you make something for a movie, commercial, or a TV show, you don't have to worry that all sides of the model look correct, just the sides that are going to be seen on film. Whereas in video games, they're going to be seeing all the different sides, so you have to make sure everything's perfect. And it's really hard seeing that, but I'm going to respect their wishes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the question I asked and then read you what they responded back with. So here we go. First question I asked is, what got you into City of Heroes?
Serendipity. I saw the box at an endcap display in a larger electronics store. I had no idea I was getting into the game within the first couple weeks of launch. It was my second major MMO experience. I had played Star Wars Galaxies a year or two prior. The costume creator, even with Cryptic's issue 0, blew my mind. Then when I hit level 6 for the first time and was able to hover, I knew my imagination would be captured for a long, long time.
This is a great answer that they gave. I 100% agree with them in character creation and the travel powers really capturing you and just embracing your imagination and being a superhero. I mean, to this day I'm still playing, and it's been a long time since I played. I was in the beta for this game, and that's really nice. The next question I asked them was, what made you want to work for a City of Heroes private server?
I loved the game from 2004 through 2012. Summer of 2012, I honestly was close to reaching out to Paragon as an independent character animator to propose contract work on custom animation suites for legacy sets. Then Labor Day weekend of 2012 happened, which was when NC Soft laid off the entirety of Paragon Studios and set the sunset date for City of Heroes. So the dream of contributing creatively to this game has been there for me for a long time.
The answer to this question really shows how the industry is and how things fluctuate on really short notice. There was a time when I was a game tester and I'd gotten a job to test a video game for one of the big companies. I show up to the job, quitting a whole entire other job to do the game testing job. And when I did this and I showed up, they informed me that the project had been canceled, but they had forgotten to notify me of this, and they had known weeks before this that the project had been canceled, and I had trained my replacement, had no way back to my previous job. So it's really hard when this kind of thing happens, but it does. Why did you choose Rebirth server over the others?
Like most everyone else who came back to City of Heroes in 2019, I started my first month on Homecoming. While it was great to be back in game, Score had made a lot of small structural and gameplay changes that emphasized a certain, more modern approach that one could characterize as streamlining. It wasn't to my tastes, and I considered leaving City of Heroes entirely. Then I heard that there were a few alternative servers popping up. Rebirth was claiming to be the place for truer to the live game experience server. So I joined first as a player and role player. While that, truer to the live game experience, was enough for myself and many other Rebirth players, it became clear that many of us wanted to see the game continue to grow and evolve. To become what an idealized version of Paragon Studios might have done with the game if money and profit were not a concern, but a love of comics, genre pulp fiction, and old-school MMOs were the guiding forces for development.
That was the answer they gave for that one. And I like this answer. I like the fact that Rebirth is sticking to what City of Heroes is and not trying to evolve it or modernize it, but keeping it to its true form and expanding from there. That's a really unique way to do things, and that's what makes Rebirth totally different. If you look at things like Homecoming and Thunder Spy, they've made a lot of changes. If you jump on Homecoming, you no longer have the generic enhancements. They got rid of it and you immediately start off with dual enhancements. And I really don't like that. If you look at Thunder Spy, they've made a lot of changes to when you get powers and throwing off that natural satisfaction feel that you get as you grow in power. And it just doesn't feel right to me. Whereas Rebirth, they've stuck and kept all that stuff. The main things that they've done is added in a new archetype, a couple of new power sets, and a bunch more costume pieces. So they're keeping more true to the original format of the game, which I personally like. The next question I asked was, what is your preferred 3D modeling program to use when making your model?
I am a visual artist by trade, working in physical media. I've done 2D and 3D animation as well as marketing and branding work as a freelancer for a couple decades for a variety of industries, including fashion and film. In those contexts, Cinema 4D has been the 3D package of choice, though I have used Rhino and Maya in other cases. Regardless, NURBS, the 3D version of vector graphics, or super high poly models have been the sort of things I've worked on. Volunteering on Rebirth as my first video game production experience. I've enjoyed this time thoroughly. And the aesthetic is quite different from my fine arts work or my commercial work. City of Heroes comes from an era of very specific graphics, low poly counts, low models, limited texture layers. To stay true to that, I work within a vintage copy of 3ds Max 11. I kind of love the challenge. It's sort of like working with cut paper collage instead of oil paints, if that makes any sense.
The answer they gave on this one is really good. I like the fact that they go into details and then also give examples of what they're saying in this. And being a 3D modeler and texture artist myself in the gaming industry, and I've done stuff for films and things like that, I 100% agree. Because when you make a model for a movie or TV, you can go that high poly count, you can go those layers of textures and things like that, because you're rendering those out and not having to worry about it being rendered real time. Whereas video games, you're limited because the player's computer is having to render that out in real time. And that takes a lot. When these movie companies make these 3D models for the movies, they have what are called these rendering farms, where they have a vast amount of these servers rendering out these images, able to use all of that power to do so. Whereas a player computer doesn't have that option. And me personally, I sort of like the challenge of working in those low poly models and texture limits. You have to use your mind and knowledge a lot more, and you have to think things through a lot better. So I really liked this answer. The next question I asked was, do you like doing poly modeling or sculpting?
For City of Heroes art, it's a lot of basic shape modeling, then cutting, adding, and dragging vertices. I've not yet used any advanced digital sculpting tools in this context like I have had to on my commercial endeavors.
What's the preferred program you like to use when doing textures?
On some occasions, I will use the model painting feature in 3ds Max 11 to create texture guidelines or provide registration marks across seams of different parts. But usually I just work in 2D with an export of the UV map as a rough guide. I use a contemporary version of Adobe Illustrator for the original artwork. I appreciate the high fidelity that a base source of vector art can provide pixelated work, as well as the flexibility it offers down the line for proliferation of new artwork to other costume parts. I then do finishing work and some normal generation in a contemporary version of Adobe Photoshop. I still have a copy of that which hasn't removed the basic normal map tools, a change that happened when Adobe introduced their new 3D modeling and surface painting software. In some cases, when adapting or modifying vintage City of Heroes textures, I've developed some methods that allow me to hand paint normal map edits by hand in black and white, texture by texture. These techniques were essential when doing tasks like adapting the clubwear metallic skirt into tight clubwear pants for male and female characters. In every task, I really want my new work to blend in as seamlessly and interchangeably as possible with the legacy game asset library we've inherited.
I love this answer also. I love the fact that they're wanting to keep with the look and feel of City of Heroes. There are so many other private servers out there that have changed things that it just doesn't look like City of Heroes. There's servers out there where you have the archetypes and the power set icons when creating the character that they've created that look nothing like what City of Heroes originally designed. And here, this developer is taking the time to make sure that it fits in and fits in well. I like the fact that they're using both normal maps and black and white, which is called bump maps, in this. And that's really, really interesting. And the difference between the way that they're used for these two types of maps, they do pretty much the same thing. They determine the texture feel on what they're making, and it gives a 3D feel. Now, normal maps, normally you can do two ways. You can either layer on a normal map of a high poly model onto a low poly model, or you can do it like Silver Age Fan here is doing and do it through Photoshop and creating the normal map based off of the texture. The bump maps are texture only. You can only do it through programs like Photoshop, where you're taking a black and white image and that's creating sort of like a height map for the texture. And this is really, really good that they're exempling the skills of using this for what they're making for the Rebirth server. After that, I asked them, what is your favorite part of being a 3D artist?
Working on a lo-fi video game, I really enjoy the level of abstraction and the challenge of conveying detail within a limited amount of polys and pixels. Also, it is an absolute delight when I actually get time to play to encounter someone wearing something I worked on, especially if the player has done something really creative and unexpected with the parts.
This answer is just another good one. When I make a game or I make something that someone uses and seeing them enjoy it just brings me so much joy when I, see the look on their face of how much they're having fun with it. It's almost better than the pay. I then moved on to the next question, which was, what was your favorite thing to 3D model in City of Heroes?
I know people have heard about the arm wings a bunch, and those are up there. I also loved doing the Latin-flavored hats we added with the 2021 Halloween update. They are available in-game under hats as sombreros cordobes. And while neither of the following are in-game yet, there is a series of earrings that I've done in a shark hood. I really had a blast doing work on both.
That's really good to hear that they're enjoying the work that they're doing on Rebirth, because that means the work's going to look really, really good. It's always my thought and philosophy that if you enjoy what you're doing, you're going to put more effort in it and be more careful about how you do things and making sure that looks good. So I like this. Then I moved on to the next question. Can you tell us how you convert 3D models into .geo format that City of Heroes uses, so that other 3D modelers can make things for the game?
There is a plugin that exists for the 3ds Max environment, from another developer named Naomi who started with Score and still works for Homecoming. Naomi has done a good job maintaining these and making sure they are available via Orodev. This plugin lets you export your geometries into a .wrl format. And the getvrml.exe tool that comes bundled with most server environments, like the one form Orodev, allows you to convert your .wrl into a .geo. Also available via Orodev and out there in the internet ether as a bundle called the Scrapyarder files. This is a bundle of leaked production assets from Paragon that include a male, female, and huge character model production file and many of the familiar costume parts. Each contains a pseudoskeleton that allows an artist to apply appropriate vertex weighting so the new geometries will move with the animations properly. Those are some of the basic starting tools needed, but there are a lot of other tools that can assist an artist in parts of the process out there in the community. I've been at this now for close to 2.5 years, and I can say there are a lot of detailed steps involved going from an idea to a model to getting it to show up in game.
I love this answer. So much detail in how to get this to work and letting people know that there's more involved into the process to get it into the game than just having the right file format. You need to know exactly where to plug it in. You need to know how models work with the game engine and things like that. So that leads to more questions I'm going to have to ask them later on about that. But this interview is getting really long. I want to finish up with the rest of the questions. There's only a few more left. So let's go ahead and get to it. Next, I asked, what would you like to see added to City of Heroes?
Okay, let's be clear. This is my dream list, not a list of things that are definitely being worked on. Some things on it are probably nearly impossible, others just require some dedicated time. I'd like to see dresses, including big ball gowns. I'd like to see many more zones added, from the story content in Callisti Wharf we never got to see in the lunar base that Paragon started to more time travel zones that get even more extreme than Cymemera. I'd like to see new comic-specific power sets, such as Elastic Melee, a fully customizable thrown weapons set, and fully customizable vermin dominators that can send a choice of snakes, squirrels, rats, beetles, locusts, sparrows, or moths at their foes. I'd love to see roller skates, fully functional gliders where your attacks still work, grappling hooks, wheelchairs, and other means of travel. I'd love to see wall crawling, for NPC enemies and for players. I'd love to see more non-bipedal skeletons in-game. And I'd love to see the Primalist archetype completed and balanced with a variety of creature branches, not just canine or feline. Like how cool would it be to be able to transform into an alligator or a silverback gorilla?
There's a lot to this answer that they gave, and it's a really well put together answer in the fact that they're not promising that everything that they would like to see will be in the game, because there's a lot of things that they mention in here that may not be feasible, such as the elastic melee. The restrictions to the game engine may not allow them to do that, but there's a lot here that I think that they could do. The throwable weapons are possible. The grappling hooks are possible. The reason City of Heroes didn't do grappling hooks was because they wanted to give it a feel of hooking on to something, and they couldn't really find a good way to do that. Me personally, it really doesn't break my imagination, because in that view you're in, it's going off screen, so you really don't see it. And so I'm fine with that personally. These other ideas like wall crawling would be cool. The hardest part of doing that would be to do the animations, is all that they would need to do really for it. What I'd personally like to see is them improve super speed. I'd love to make it so that super speed works like it does in DC Universe Online, where you're running along and then you hit a building, instead of smacking into that building and not being able to go up alongside it, you actually run up the building and alongside the building. That would be really, really cool to see put into City of Heroes. Now, whether or not they're able to do it is another question. So let me move on to a follow-up question that I asked to the last one, which is, how open are you to having players bring ideas to you to be added to the server, such as new power sets, like a shield power set for the Guardian archetype that lets you do melee attacks with shields and thrown attacks for ranged attacks?
The Rebirth team is very open to reading ideas from players and longtime fans of the game. This doesn't mean that we can or will always prioritize any given idea, regardless of how well it is thought out and expressed. Sometimes it is in conflict with our larger vision. Other times, we may have some insider knowledge that, though it sounds easy on the face of it, like your suggestion for patterns on tights with skin, there are some deep technical issues that would need to be addressed first. And other times still, an idea expressed by a player might underscore an existing dream held by one or more members of our dev staff. Specifically to your example, this is not the first time that a shield set with melee and ranged attacks has been suggested. In fact, I recall the desire for a shield attack set going all the way back to forums on Live. But I will agree that Guardian assault sets, with their unique blend of ranged and melee attacks as well as Guardian primaries with their reliance on defensive powers, makes it the perfect setting if there ever was one for that sort of shield power set. Without giving too much away, let's just say the technical challenges of such a set have been explored. And we have discovered that there are indeed many. So Shield Assault definitely falls into categories 2 and 3 as far as ideas go. And while it may seem impossible today, remember for years we were told that asymmetric torso patterns and refitting the library was simply too much work for it to ever be done. Yet here we are.
This answer really shows how they're pushing the boundaries of what they can do in City of Heroes and really looking into the code and how City of Heroes works in the game engine. And that's nice to see. The final question I asked was, can you tell us anything interesting that is being worked on for City of Heroes Rebirth server?
We have a lot we are working on. Some of it nibbles in the direction of my absurd wish list above. Every dev on our team has some outrageous creative ambitions in their heart. But what is around the corner that I can talk about? I can say that fans of Keldians have something to be excited about. And we have a big revamp of pool powers coming that should make it a lot harder to decide which powers to take. With male torso asymmetry finally being wrapped up, a task that took me 6 months of work, I'm going to be doing a little more animation work. In the coming years, I hope to do for character movement what I've been able to do for costume options. Lastly, there is a goal to by this time next year be done with the ASM torso rollout with huge chest and hip asymmetry. Some preliminary work has already been done on something rather hefty, giving players even more options to round out the sort of characters they can make.
Thank you for taking the time to do this interview. It was greatly appreciated. Do you have anything you want to say to the listeners?
Thank you, Controlled Chaos, for this opportunity. I hope to see you and some of your viewers in games sometime soon.
Well, that's it for this interview. I hope you all enjoyed it, and have a good day.